The moment my father raised his retirement glass, my mother smiled and told the entire room, "We have one daughter who made something of herself, and one who married well." Everyone laughed. I felt my face burn. Then my husband quietly stood beside me, took the microphone from my father's hand, and said, "Actually, there's something you should all know about me." The room went completely silent. My name is Emily Carter, and until that night, I thought I understood exactly where I stood in my family. My father, Robert, was 65 and had just retired after 38 years at the same manufacturing company. He was proud, stubborn, and deeply concerned about what other people thought of him. My mother, Linda, was 62. She loved appearances even more than my father did. And then there was my younger brother, Jason, 29. Jason could do almost anything and still somehow receive applause for it. When he changed jobs 3 times in 1 year, Dad called him ambitious. When I built a successful career, Mom called me lucky. I had stopped trying to understand the difference. I was 34 and married to Daniel, a quiet, thoughtful man who worked in what I believed was financial consulting. We had been married for 4 years. Daniel wasn't flashy. He drove an old sedan, wore simple clothes, and never talked about money. That was one of the reasons I loved him. My parents, however, never seemed impressed. At family dinners, Dad would ask Jason about his latest plans. Mom would ask me whether Daniel had found a better job yet. I always changed the subject. Daniel never complained. He simply squeezed my hand under the table. Then came Dad's retirement dinner. It was held at an expensive hotel downtown. There were nearly 80 guests, family members, Dad's former coworkers, neighbors, and several business associates. I spent the entire afternoon helping Mom prepare. She barely thanked me. Instead, she kept checking her phone. "Where's Jason?" I asked. "He's running late." "He always is." Mom frowned. "Don't start." I smiled sadly. I wasn't. When Daniel and I arrived at the hotel, Dad was already greeting guests. He hugged Daniel briefly. "Good to see you, son." Then he turned to me. "Emily, make sure your mother gets everything she needs tonight." That was my father. Even on his retirement night, I was apparently part daughter and part unpaid assistant. Still, I tried to enjoy myself. Dad gave a speech about his career. Everyone applauded. He talked about sacrifice, loyalty, and family. I smiled. Then the dinner began. About halfway through the evening, one of Dad's coworkers stood and gave a toast. He praised Dad for being a hard worker and a good mentor. Then several others spoke. Finally, Mom stood. She raised her glass. "To Robert," she said. "The man who gave everything to his family." Everyone applauded. Mom looked at me. "And now that he's retired, perhaps he'll finally have time to enjoy the life he deserves." I smiled. Then she added, "Unlike some people, who only know how to take." My smile disappeared. I knew exactly who she meant. Dad looked uncomfortable. "Linda." But she continued. She turned toward me. "Emily, your father spent 38 years working so you and Jason could have opportunities." I felt every eye in the room move toward me. "Mom, this isn't the time." "Why not?" Her voice became louder. "Everyone here knows how much we've done for you." Daniel touched my arm. I whispered, "Please don't." But Mom wasn't finished. "You have a good career. You have a nice house. You have a husband who seems perfectly comfortable." She paused. "Yet somehow, you still act like you're the one who was mistreated." A few people looked away. I felt humiliated. My father finally said, "Linda, enough." But then Jason arrived. Late. Of course. He walked in wearing an expensive suit. Mom immediately smiled. "There he is." She hugged him. Then she looked at me. "See? Jason understands family." I couldn't take it anymore. I stood. I've spent my entire life trying to make this family proud. Mom laughed. No one asked you to. That sentence hurt more than anything else. I grabbed my purse. I think I'm going home. Dad looked at me. Emily, wait. I shook my head. No, Dad. It's okay. I turned toward the exit. Then Daniel stood. Emily. I stopped. He looked at me differently. Not angry. Not sad. Certain. Please stay. I turned around. Why? He walked toward the microphone. I had no idea what he was doing. Daniel? He looked at my father. Mr. Carter, you've spent tonight talking about sacrifice. Dad nodded slowly. Yes. Daniel took a breath. Then I think it's time you knew what your daughter has been sacrificing for years. My stomach dropped. What are you talking about? Daniel looked at me. I promised I wouldn't tell you until I was certain. Certain about what? He didn't answer. Instead, he turned toward the audience. My name is Daniel Reed. That name meant nothing to me. Then he said, I am not a financial consultant. My heart stopped. The room became silent. Daniel continued. I am the managing partner of Reed & Cole Holdings. Someone near the back gasped. I stared at him. What? He looked at me with tears in his eyes. I'm sorry, Emily. I couldn't move. Reed & Cole was one of the largest private investment firms in the region. I'd seen their name in business articles. I'd never connected it to my quiet husband. But that wasn't even the biggest revelation. Daniel looked at my father. Your company has been one of the firms we've been reviewing for the past 18 months. Dad's face changed. What? Daniel nodded. We've been evaluating several manufacturing companies for acquisition. My father stared at him. Why didn't you tell me? Daniel answered quietly. Because you never asked who I really was. That sentence hit the room like a stone. But then everything became even stranger. Dad's company wasn't being acquired by Daniel personally. It was being evaluated because the company was struggling. Daniel explained that his firm had discovered financial irregularities. Large ones. Money had been moved between several accounts. Payments had been approved without proper authorization. And one of the names connected to those transactions was my brother, Jason. I looked at my brother. He had gone completely pale. Jason? He shook his head. It's not what you think. Daniel looked at him. Then tell them. Jason said nothing. My father stepped forward. Daniel, what exactly are you accusing my son of? I'm not accusing him. Daniel pulled a folder from his briefcase. I'm showing you. He handed it to Dad. My father opened it. His hands began shaking. Mom walked closer. What is it? Dad didn't answer. I looked at Daniel. What's happening? He came back to me. I didn't want you involved. Then why are you doing this now? Because your parents have been humiliating you for something they don't understand. He paused. And because I finally discovered why. I felt cold. What do you mean? Daniel pointed toward my father. Your father didn't retire because he wanted to. Everyone went silent. Dad stared at him. He was forced out. My father's face hardened. That is private. Daniel nodded. It was. Then he placed another document on the table. But not anymore. The document showed a financial review. The company's board had discovered missing funds. Dad had taken responsibility for some decisions. But another person had been approving payments. Jason. My brother had used his position to move company money into a private account. Dad had known. And instead of reporting him, he had covered the losses. My mother knew too. That's why they had been desperate for Dad to retire quietly. That's why Jason had arrived late. And suddenly, every strange conversation from the past year made sense. But there was still one thing I didn't understand. "Daniel," I whispered, "why did you know all this?" He looked at me. "Because I was the person hired to investigate it." I felt betrayed. "You knew about my family?" "I knew about the company. But you never told me." "I wanted to protect you." I shook my head. "You don't get to decide what I can handle." He lowered his eyes. "You're right." For the first time that evening, he looked scared. Not because of my father. Because he thought he had lost my trust. I walked outside. The hotel doors closed behind me. Daniel followed. "Emily." I didn't turn around. "You lied to me." "I hid something from you." "That feels like the same thing." "I know." I finally faced him. "Did you marry me because of my family?" His expression broke. "No." "Did you know who my father was before we met?" "Yes." My heart sank. "How?" "Your father once asked our firm for financing." I stared at him. "And you still married me?" Daniel gave a small, painful smile. "I married the woman who sat beside me at a coffee shop for 3 hours talking about architecture." I remembered that day. I remembered him listening while I complained about a project. I remembered thinking he was the first person who seemed interested in me without wanting something. Daniel reached for my hand. I let him. Then something unexpected happened. My father walked outside. He looked older than he had an hour earlier. "Emily." I didn't answer. He swallowed. "I owe you an apology." I had waited years to hear those words. But they didn't feel as satisfying as I imagined. "You humiliated me tonight." "I know." "You let Mom tell everyone I was selfish." "I should have stopped her." "You should have stopped her years ago." He looked down. "Yes." Then he said something I never expected. "I was jealous of you." I blinked. "My own daughter?" He nodded. "You built something without needing me." I didn't know what to say. Dad continued. "I thought if I praised Jason and criticized you, I could keep you both close." I shook my head. "You pushed me away." "I know." Behind him, Mom stood crying. Jason wasn't with her. The investigation continued over the following months. My father's company was eventually sold. Jason faced legal consequences for his financial actions. My parents lost much of their social standing. But I didn't celebrate that. Because revenge didn't fix what had been broken. What changed me was something quieter. I stopped trying to earn my parents' approval. I stopped explaining my success. I stopped apologizing for having boundaries. And Daniel? He became completely honest with me. No hidden accounts. No secret business meetings. No more deciding what I was ready to know. We went to counseling together. It wasn't easy. But slowly, trust returned. A year later, Danielle and I visited my father. He was living in a smaller house. No fancy parties. No business dinners. Just a quiet life. He looked at me and said, "You were always stronger than I gave you credit for." I smiled. "I didn't want to be strong, Dad." He looked confused. "I just wanted to be your daughter." He lowered his eyes. "I know." And for the first time, I believed him. My father's retirement dinner was supposed to be about celebrating his career. Instead, it became the night my family finally faced the truth. My parents thought I was the weak daughter because I stayed quiet. They thought my husband was an ordinary man because he didn't show off. They were wrong about both of us. I learned something that night that I will never forget. People can underestimate you because they only see the version of you that you allow them to see. But you don't have to prove your worth to people who refuse to recognize it. Sometimes the strongest response isn't shouting. It's standing up, walking away, and building a life so peaceful that you no longer need anyone's permission to be proud of it.